Hello YouTube and welcome to the next video in the route learning series for Train Simulator. In this journey we're going to be taking the return part of the previous video, which was from Ipswich to Felixstowe on the Felixstowe branch line. So today we're going to be driving from Felixstowe to Ipswich, which is a distance of around 15.5 miles. And we'll be calling at Trimley, Derby Road, Westerfield and Ipswich. The traction for the journey today is a Class 150. This service is in fact usually operated by a single car Class 153. However, the Class 153 model available for Train Simulator is just a little bit on the old side now, and I'm not quite so keen on that model, which is why I've opted to use an unbranded Anglia liveried Class 150. We're actually using the Class 150/2 subclass. The Class 150 was built between 1984 and 1987. 137 train sets were built in total. Some of the previous subclass 150/1 have no end gangway, so you can't actually walk between the trains when they're operating in multiple, but the 150/2 does have this end gangway. So when working in multiple you can walk through the whole train. The maximum speed of this train is 75 miles per hour. It handles in many ways similarly to the Class 156 which I used in the last video. The total weight of the train is 35.8 tonnes and it has a power output of 286 horsepower per engine, and there is one engine per coach. Once inside the cab of the Class 150, the first thing that we need to do is look on the dashboard and we need to put the master key in. We then need to move the reversing handle, which will trigger the AWS self-test sequence. We'll now set that into the forward position. Now over here we need to turn on the marker lights and the instrument lights, the destination indicator, turn the headlights to right, which is daytime headlights, and turn the tail lights off. Down here, looking more around the cab, we have a Westcode 3-step brake, so much like the Class 156 in the last video. We have 3 positions, Step 1, Step 2 and Step 3, which is full service, and beyond that the emergency position. In front of us we have the AWS reset button, the horn. Next to the speedometer we have the brake gauge, and it is the right hand needle that denotes how hard the brakes are applied. In this position, at a complete right angle, we know that the brakes are applied in the full service position. We have a 7-step power controller, so from off all the way up to step 7. After this I like to open the windows because you can hear the engine better, and it's nice to hear the noise of the wind rushing by when you're moving at speed. Another nifty feature we have here is the radio, which has a self-test sequence. So if we press the radio, you'll hear what happens.
Hello Ian, test message NRN radio, over.
Message received, loud and clear, over.
Thanks for that, message out.
Departing Felixstowe town, we've got about 1.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Trimley. On the HUD it would actually show a speed limit of 40 miles per hour here. However, I'm not completely certain it would be 40 straight out of a single line bay platform. So what I'm going to do is, as I get to 15 miles per hour, I'm going to shut off power and coast, just until we pass this 40 mile per hour board coming up just ahead. As we reach the 40 mph speed limit, I'm now going to shut off power on coast until we're able to accelerate further. Coming in from the left now is the line from Felixstowe port, which is used by freight only. And as we join the main line, we'll be passing a board here for a 75 mph speed limit. We can accelerate just beyond the rear of the signal that we've just passed on the right. The green signal that you can see appearing in the distance is actually just before the station at Trimley. Now we've reached 50 mph, I'm shutting off power to coast. And the braking point I'm going to use for Trimley is roughly the AWS ramp for the signal just coming up. Unfortunately, I had to use slightly harder braking there than I planned, but that's why you should always aim for a step 2 brake application, so if you do make a slight mistake, you've got that extra brake force so that you can stop. So we're stopping by the first S-car sign here at Trimley. On departure from Trimley, the starting speed limit is 75 mph, and we've got about 8 miles to go to the next stop, which is Derby Road. As you can see, the Class 150 certainly isn't the fastest train for its acceleration rate, and in fact by the time we've reached a speed of around 75 mph, we should have travelled around 3 miles. As we reach 75 miles per hour, to ensure that we don't break the speed limit, we have to cut the throttle to step 5 to stop us from accelerating. Again, as we're dropping speed towards 70 miles per hour, we're now going to go back up to step 6 power to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. If we again reach 75, I'll once again step down to step 5. As we reach this signal, we're now about 3¼ miles from Derby Road. We're now on a climbing gradient of 1 in 133, so I've gone up to full power to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. Even on full power, this train is unable to accelerate on this uphill gradient. Now that the gradient's levelled out and we're accelerating again, I'm going to shut off power and coast because it's not too long before we have to start slowing down for the next speed limit. The Morpeth walk we've just passed was for a 50-mile-per-hour speed restriction, and that's 1½ miles from our stop. Now, as we can see the green signal ahead, I'm applying the brakes to slow for the 50 speed limit, because the 50 board is just after the signal. We're now going to coast towards Derby Road. There is a sudden slight drop just here, which is why I've slowed us down to slightly below 50 miles per hour. And we can coast now all the way to the station. The signal just here is about ½ mile from the stop. Now entering a double track section, and as we see the station just ahead, we can then apply the brakes. You can now see the end of the platform just coming up, so we'll apply the brakes to slow down. The stopping point here at Derby Road is actually at the other end of the platform. Departing Derby Road, the starting speed limit is 50 miles per hour, and we've got about 2.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Westerfield. Now that we've reached the 50 mile per hour speed limit, I've temporarily shut off power. Very shortly we will be climbing quite steeply on a gradient of 1 in 87, at which point we're then going to have to go up to step 5 of power. You can now see us starting to climb. So I've now applied step 5 power to try and ensure that we don't lose any speed. Now that we've reached the AWS ramp that we've just gone over, the gradient has levelled out. I've now shut off power to let the train coast. We've got about a mile to go to Westerfield. And we'll shortly be getting a speed reduction down to 35 miles per hour. The AWS ramp that we've just crossed, I used that as the braking point for the 35 mile per hour speed limit. And as you can see, here's the 35 board, which is actually very close to Westerfield station. We're going downhill here at 1 in 85, so I'm not going to release the brakes until we're down to 30 miles per hour to ensure that we don't go too fast. And you can now see the platform for Westerfield just coming up. The stopping point here is near the end of the platform. I'm going to brake to try and enter the platform at around 20 miles per hour. And you can see the S-car stop sign just coming up on the left. And now we've arrived at Westerfield. On departure from Westerfield, the starting speed limit is 60 miles per hour, and we've got about 3.5 miles to go to the next stop and final stop, which is Ipswich. It is downhill most of the way to Ipswich from here to Ipswich Yard. We'll go downhill on a varying gradient, but the maximum gradient we'll go down on is 1 in 90. So once we reach around 50 miles per hour, I'm going to shut off power because the train should then coast up towards 60. Shut off power slightly later than I initially planned, as I realised that we still weren't accelerating particularly quickly. But as you can now see, we're slowly coasting up towards 60 miles per hour. As we reach 60 miles per hour, I'm going to apply step 1 braking so that we can lose a little bit of speed, go down towards 55 before releasing again. So we've now got a warning board for a speed reduction to 40 miles per hour. The warning board is about 3/4 of a mile from the limit itself. And we're going to use the braking point of the rear of the next signal on the opposite track. As soon as we reach that point, we'll then brake for the 40 mile per hour limit. You can see the rear of the signal now. So now the brakes are on. I'm going up to step 2 because I'm not 100% certain where the board is ahead. We're now entering the 40 mile per hour speed zone, and we're going through Ipswich Yard, which is actually normally used for freight. And we're joining the Great Eastern Main Line, which is coming in from the right, which is the line up to Norwich. And as you can see, we now have overhead wires as this area is electrified. At this point, I'm just going to coast in towards Ipswich. There will shortly be a speed reduction to 25 and then 15 miles per hour as we enter the platform to Ipswich. For some reason there's a slight bug there, and I was actually given the AWS for a green signal when we have a single yellow. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I do know that the single yellow is because we're now reaching a bay platform. So as we pass the 40 board we just passed on the left there, if we brake into step 1, that should slow us down nicely for the 25 and then the 15 mile per hour speed limit entering Ipswich. Although the speed limit entering the bay platform here is 15 miles per hour, I try to enter the platform at no faster than 10. So here we are, arrival at Ipswich. Thank you for watching and I hope you've enjoyed the video.